My son said he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, so I canceled the mortgage payment. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing this with anyone who's ever been blindsided by the person they trusted the most. I had booked the flight weeks in advance. Christmas was coming, and I hadn't seen my son in almost a year. After losing my wife, the house felt too quiet. I thought spending the holidays with family would help. I imagined the grandkids opening presents, the smell of coffee in the morning, maybe even a quiet moment by the fire with my son. That was the plan, at least. I called him the morning after I got the confirmation email for my flight. I expected a warm reaction, maybe even some excitement. He picked up after the second ring. "Hey, it's Dad," I said. There was a pause, then a tired-sounding "Hey. I just wanted to let you know I'll be flying in on the 23rd. I figured I'd surprise you and the kids for Christmas." Another pause. This one longer. "Finally," he said. "I wasn't expecting you." That was it. Not great. Not can't wait to see you. Just those 5 words. I felt them like a slap. "Oh," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, I thought it might be nice." Silence again. He mumbled something about plans already being made, how things were a bit tight, and how the house might be full. He didn't say not to come, not directly, but he didn't need to. I could hear it in his tone. I ended the call politely, told him to give the kids a hug from me, said we'd catch up soon. But after I hung up, I sat there in my kitchen for a long time. The lights were off, the kettle had gone cold, and the only sound was the old clock ticking above the sink. I stared at the bank app on my phone. I had been paying his mortgage every month since his mother died. It was something she and I agreed on. Help him get through the rough patch. Give him space to build a life. He had promised to visit more, keep us close. It wasn't supposed to be forever, but I never stopped. That morning, I didn't cancel my flight. I just let the ticket go to waste. But I did cancel something else. I opened the mortgage autopay settings and turned it off. No message. No warning. Just stopped it quietly. If he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, he shouldn't expect the payment either. And just like that, something shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt done. Like a door had closed, and I didn't have the energy to knock anymore. After my wife's funeral, the house didn't feel like home anymore. Everything reminded me of her. The way she folded towels, the small humming sounds she made while cooking, the smell of her shampoo still clinging to her pillow. My son stood beside me that day, one arm around my shoulder, eyes red but dry. He said we needed to hold on to each other now, that we were all we had left. We sat in the kitchen a few days later, both of us silent for a long time. He was behind on the mortgage. Work had slowed down, bills had piled up, and with 2 kids and a car in the shop, he said he was barely staying afloat. I didn't hesitate. I told him I'd cover it. Every month. No interest, no strings. It's what your mother would have wanted, I said. He nodded. I'll make it up to you. I promise. That was the deal, spoken quietly between 2 grieving men. He would visit more. Bring the kids around. Keep the family close. It wasn't written down, but it mattered more than any paper. At first, he did try. He'd bring the kids by once every couple of months. We'd go to the park, have lunch, watch old movies. I clung to those days like lifelines. Then the visits got shorter. Then fewer. And eventually they stopped. When he told me he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, it was more than just a cold comment. It was a reminder that I had become something else in his life. Not a father, not family, just the man who paid his mortgage. I sat alone that night, thinking about the way he spoke to me on the phone. No warmth, no effort, no sense of the promise we made. And I began to wonder if that's all I had ever been to him, a provider, a fallback, a safety net. I looked at the payment history. Every month like clockwork. Thousands of dollars over the year. No thank you notes. No check-ins. Just silence. I wasn't angry. Not really. Just tired. Tired of hoping he'd come around. Tired of pretending the money meant we were still connected. Tired of being useful but unwanted. I used to believe our arrangement was about love. About family. But now it felt like a transaction. A quiet deal that only I remembered. The promise was simple. I'll help you, and you'll keep this family together. But only one of us kept their end. A week passed after that phone call. No messages, no calls, not even a forwarded photo of the kids opening gifts. I didn't expect much, but a part of me still hoped. I told myself maybe he was just busy, maybe he'd realize how he sounded. But deep down I knew better. The silence wasn't accidental, it was comfortable. Then on the 8th day my phone buzzed. A text from him. For a moment, I let myself believe he'd come around. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he missed me. I opened it. Hey, just noticed the mortgage payment didn't go through. Everything okay? No, how are you? No, hope you're all right. Just business. I stared at the screen. The quiet anger that had been brewing inside me began to settle into something colder. I didn't reply right away. I left it unread for a few hours. I took a walk, made coffee, fed the neighbor's cat like I'd promised. When I finally responded, I kept it simple. Must have been a glitch. I'll check on it. That was it. No promises, no explanations. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the street, the same one where I used to teach him how to ride a bike. I could still see him wobbling, gripping the handlebars, looking back at me for reassurance. I remembered the way he smiled when he finally found balance. How proud he was, how proud I was. And now here we were, years later, and I was nothing but a failed transaction in his inbox. I knew then that something had shifted a long time ago. I had just been too blind to see it. Maybe it was after his mother died. Maybe before. I replayed old conversations in my head, wondering if there had been signs, little moments I'd brushed off. He used to say things like, "You've done more than enough," or "I'll start taking care of things soon." Words meant to ease guilt, I realize now. Words that held no intention. I wanted to know what changed. What made him stop seeing me as a father and start seeing me as a direct deposit. I wasn't naive. People drift, families fracture. But this wasn't distance. This was convenience. I had become useful, and now that usefulness had expired. Still, I didn't say any of that. I let the conversation fade. I kept quiet, but inside I began to build questions. Not angry ones, just sharp, quiet ones. What if I stopped helping? What if I pulled away everything? Would he come back? Would he fight? Or would he replace me? I wasn't done yet. I didn't want revenge, not yet. I wanted clarity, and that meant playing dumb, just a little longer. It was Christmas night. I hadn't left the house all day. No one had called. No one had stopped by. The living room was quiet, the tree lights blinking slowly like they were tired too. I sat in my chair with a blanket over my lap, trying to watch an old Western on TV, but my mind kept drifting. I told myself I wouldn't check, that I didn't care. But curiosity is louder than pride when you're lonely. I picked up my phone and opened my son's profile. I hadn't looked in a while. Part of me hoped to see something simple, maybe a photo of the grandkids, maybe the dog chewing on a wrapping paper roll. Just a sliver of a world I used to belong to. The top post was from that morning. A family photo. My son, his wife, their 2 kids. They were sitting in the living room, all wearing matching pajamas. Wrapping paper everywhere. Smiles so big they looked staged. But there was someone else in the picture. An older man sat on the armrest beside my son, one hand on his shoulder, laughing, comfortable, like he belonged. The caption read, "Grateful for those who show up when it matters most." I didn't breathe for a few seconds. I just stared at that photo. My thumb hovered over the screen. I zoomed in slowly. It was him. The man was Charles Henson, my wife's old coworker. He used to come around for dinner now and then, always bringing a bottle of wine and stories about his travels. My wife never liked him much. Said he was slick, too interested in other people's business. I hadn't thought about him in years. I stared at his hand on my son's shoulder, at how my daughter-in-law leaned toward him like he was family. He was sitting where I should have been, in my place, with my family. On Christmas morning, I looked through the rest of the photos on the post, but that was the only one where Charles appeared. Then I noticed something strange. No older photos with me in them. Nothing from past holidays. No photos of the visits I used to make. It was like I had been quietly erased. I backed out and looked through older posts. More photos, more holidays, and not one of them included me. Either I'd been cropped out, or never included in the first place. I sat back and let the phone fall onto my lap. That was the moment something inside me cooled. Not broke, cooled. Solidified. Whatever warmth I had been holding on to, whatever part of me was still hoping for an explanation, just stopped. I wasn't forgotten. I was replaced. And I had no idea how long it had been happening. I couldn't shake the image from my head. Charles Henson, sitting with my family like he belonged. My son laughing beside him. My daughter-in-law leaning in, comfortable. As if he'd always been part of their lives. I hadn't seen Charles in years. Not since before my wife passed. He was always around back then, hovering. Too friendly. Too helpful. My wife had tolerated him, but she never liked him. She told me once, quietly, that he gave her a bad feeling. That he asked too many questions, offered to help in ways that felt too personal. He had a way of making himself useful, even when no one asked. I had brushed it off. Said he was just being kind. Maybe I didn't want to see it. Or maybe I didn't want to believe my instincts could be that wrong. But now, seeing him in that photo, I started questioning everything. Why was he there? Why was he close to my son? And how had he found his way into my family's life again? That night, I went looking for answers. I pulled out the old boxes from the closet. My wife had kept notebooks, journals, and little folders of letters and emails she printed out. She was private, but she wrote everything down. I hadn't opened these boxes since the funeral. Dust covered the lids, and the paper inside smelled faintly of her lavender perfume. I opened her last journal, a small leather-bound one she kept near the end. Most of it was notes about medications, grocery lists, letters she never sent. Then I found a page marked with a folded receipt. The writing was tight, rushed, different from her usual calm hand. She'd written, "If something happens to me, don't trust CH." That was it. One sentence. A warning, buried between pages about prescription refills and doctor's appointments. I sat there in silence, the words sinking in. CH Charles Henson. I kept flipping, searching for context. In one earlier entry, she wrote about him calling too often. Said he dropped by unannounced. That he seemed to know things she hadn't told him. She wrote that he offered to handle the finances when she started getting tired. She never took him up on it, but he kept circling back. It hit me hard, the realization that she'd been uneasy about him near the end. And now, he had somehow found his way into my son's home. Sitting at the table where I should have been. Smiling beside the people I loved. I didn't know how deeply he had embedded himself into their lives. I didn't know why my son welcomed him, or what lies had been told along the way. But something was wrong. Very wrong. And I was done ignoring it. I made an appointment with our old family lawyer, Gregory Lane. I told him I needed to update my will. Standard stuff, I said. Nothing urgent. He didn't ask questions. We'd worked with him for over 20 years, through the house purchase, the estate planning, even my wife's final documents. He still kept a photo of the three of us on his bookshelf. I wondered if he even noticed she was gone. The office hadn't changed. Same dark wood paneling, same hum from the air vent that never worked right. Gregory greeted me like an old friend, offered coffee, and asked about my health. I gave short answers. I wasn't here to catch up. I had one real reason for coming. We sat down and he opened his notepad. I asked about adjusting a few small things, removing an old car from the documents, changing the name of a secondary beneficiary. He scribbled notes, nodding, calm and focused. Then I leaned back and said, almost offhandedly, "No one's tried to make any changes to the trust, right? It's still set up the way Linda and I left it." He paused for just a second. Not long, but enough. Then he cleared his throat. "Actually, there was something. A request came through a couple of weeks ago. Your son called. Said he wanted to explore the possibility of redirecting the funds." Redirecting? Gregory shifted in his seat. He phrased it carefully. Said something about how, with you getting older, it might be time to start easing the responsibility off your plate. Asked if the trust could be moved under new management. New management, I repeated. My voice didn't rise. I just let the words settle. He didn't push, Gregory said quickly. And I didn't act on anything. I told him it would require full consent and signatures. Legally, it was a dead end. But I thought it was odd. Especially the timing. 2 weeks ago. That was before the Christmas call. Before he said he wasn't expecting me. So while I was booking flights, hoping to see my family, he was already trying to take control of the money. I nodded slowly, pretending to absorb it like it didn't sting. Thanks for telling me, I said. Let's move forward with the changes we discussed. Keep everything else as is. Gregory gave a tight smile and returned to his notes. But inside, I wasn't calm. My son hadn't just pulled away. He'd made plans. Quiet plans. While I was still alive, still breathing, still willing to help. He'd already started looking for ways to cut me out. Not just from the house or Christmas, but from the family's future. From the legacy my wife and I built. I walked out of that office knowing one thing for certain. He wasn't waiting for me to die. He was preparing for it. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I packed a small bag, filled the tank, and drove west for nearly 2 days. No music. No radio. Just the sound of tires on pavement and the quiet throb of thoughts I couldn't shut off. The farther I drove, the clearer everything became. This wasn't about a visit. It was about clarity. About truth. And maybe a little bit about confrontation. I pulled onto my son's street just after sunset on New Year's Eve. The neighborhood was quiet, blanketed in light snow. The windows of his house glowed warm. Inside, I could see movement, people gathering, music low, kids running in and out of frame. He was having a party, and I hadn't even been invited. I stayed in the car for a while, parked across the street, engine off. The cold crept in fast, but I didn't move. I watched. That's when I saw him. Charles Henson, standing near the fireplace, laughing with a glass in his hand, wearing a suit, and the cufflinks. The silver cufflinks I gave my wife on our 20th anniversary. I I recognized them instantly. She used to wear them on her favorite blouse. I didn't even know they were missing. Now they were on his wrists. I got out of the car. My legs felt heavy as I crossed the street. My heart wasn't racing. It had gone the other way. Slow. Cold. Solid. I walked up to the door and knocked twice, hard enough to cut through the music. It went quiet inside. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened. My son stood there, drink in hand mid-sentence, until he saw me. "Dad!" His voice dropped. Eyes widened. Not happy. Not welcoming. Just caught. "Happy New Year," I said. "Mind if I come in?" He hesitated, glanced behind him, then stepped aside. The room fell quiet as I walked in. A few faces turned. Some I recognized, most I didn't. Then I saw him up close, Charles, standing by the mantel like he owned it. He smiled like he was amused. "I see you've made yourself comfortable," I said to him, eyeing the cufflinks. "They were Linda's," he replied casually, as if that explained anything. "I know. I gave them to her." No one spoke. I turned to my son. "I came to spend Christmas with my family. You said you weren't expecting me. Now I see why." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "No, don't lie. Not tonight." The room was heavy now. People shifted, looked away. Charles stepped forward, but I looked right through him. "This isn't your home," I said quietly. Then I turned back to my son. "You let someone take my place. That's your choice. But don't expect me to keep playing my part from across the country while someone else wears my wife's memory on his wrist." I didn't wait for a response. I walked out the door, letting the silence hang behind me like a curtain closing. I didn't plan to go back inside. But something stopped me halfway down the walkway. Maybe it was the cold, maybe it was the weight in my chest that felt unfinished. I turned around, walked back up the steps, and stepped into the house again without knocking. My son hadn't moved. Neither had Charles. The room was still quiet. People were uncomfortable, shifting their drinks, trying to pretend they weren't listening. I looked straight at my son. "Let's talk," I said. He nodded slowly and led me down the hall into a quieter room, probably his home office. The door clicked shut behind us. He didn't sit. Neither did I. "I know about the trust," I said. "Gregory told me you tried to get control of it. 2 weeks ago." He looked down for a second. Then back at me. "I just thought, you're getting older. Things should be easier for you." I laughed just once. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp. "That's not what this is. You weren't trying to help me. You were trying to cut me out before I was even gone." His jaw tightened. "You've always made it about you. Even when Mom died. I needed help, and all I got were payments and guilt. You needed help, and I gave it. Month after month. I never asked for anything but your time. And when I came to spend Christmas with my family, you said you weren't expecting me. Then I find Charles sitting in my place, wearing your mother's cufflinks." His face twitched. That hit. "I didn't tell him to wear them," he muttered. "No, but you let him. And you let him in." "When?" He hesitated. "Right after Mom's funeral," he said. He reached out. Said he was sorry. Started checking in. "You were quiet back then. Distant. I was grieving." "So was I," he said louder now. "But you just disappeared into your own sadness." He showed up. He asked how I was doing. He helped with the house. He played with the kids. He replaced me. My son looked away. "He was easier," he admitted. "He didn't remind me of everything I did wrong. You did. You were old guilt." He was clean. Present. That stung. But I didn't show it. I just nodded, like I was filing away the truth. "I stopped the mortgage," I said. "Not because I needed to. Because I wanted to see if you'd notice." "You could have just talked to me," he snapped. "No, I couldn't. Not when you'd already made room for someone else. Not when you were already planning how to move on. From me, from everything." He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Whatever version of us had existed, it wasn't coming back. I opened the door and left him standing in the silence. When I got home, the house felt different. Not quieter, just clearer. The same couch, same books, same faint scent of my wife's favorite candle still lingering in the hallway. But everything felt sharper, like a window had been cleaned and I could finally see through it. I made coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened my folder. Inside were the bank statements, the trust documents, and the contact sheet for Gregory Lane's office. I didn't hesitate. I didn't second-guess. I didn't even feel sad. I felt finished. The trust had been untouched since my wife passed. We built it together, modest but stable. Enough to help our son stay afloat, enough to give our grandkids a leg up. But it was never just about money. It was about connection, about keeping something intact after we were gone. But I wasn't gone yet. And now I knew what that money meant to him. Not love, not family, just leverage. Just a future payout. I clicked my pen. The first change. I reassigned the primary beneficiary of the trust. No longer my son. I redirected the funds to a local community food bank, the one my wife used to volunteer at every Saturday. She always said feeding someone was the purest kind of kindness. Next, I created a scholarship in her name. Linda D. Whitmore Memorial Fund. It would go to young women studying public health. She would have liked that. She used to say small-town clinics saved more lives than hospitals ever bragged about. Lastly, I transferred a portion into a foundation for single fathers. Men raising kids alone. Men who were forgotten. Men who never got a break. I had been lucky. I'd had a partner for most of my life, but I'd seen what loneliness could do to a man. I wanted to give those men something. A start. Each change took a few signatures, a few confirmations, 10 minutes, maybe less. With every stroke of the pen, I felt lighter. My son would find out eventually, months from now, maybe years, when he reached for something that was no longer his. When he realized the plan he built in silence had quietly unraveled. There would be no big announcement, no confrontation. Just a quiet absence where something used to be. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because clarity is a gift. He replaced me, erased me, then tried to move the pieces without me noticing. Now he'll have to learn how to build something on his own. I set the pen down and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the street was quiet. Snow was starting to fall again, soft and slow. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. The voicemails started 2 weeks later. At first, they came every few days, then every day. By the end of the month, my son was calling 2 or 3 times daily, his voice tight, then soft, then angry, then pleading. I never answered. I never listened. The phone stayed in my pocket on silent. I saw the missed calls, the voicemail count going up, but I didn't tap to play them. I didn't need to. I already knew the pattern, the regret, the bargaining, the reaching back too late. I had lived it once in real time. I didn't need to replay it in my ear. I kept my mornings simple now. I walked the park near my house, the one with the wooden bridge and the frozen pond. Years ago, I used to bring my son here. He'd toss breadcrumbs to the ducks, always dropping too much in one spot. He'd laugh, run ahead, wait for me to catch up. Now I walked alone. I passed the bench where we used to sit. I didn't linger. I kept moving. I didn't need memories tugging on me. Not anymore. I had chosen stillness, not out of pain, but because it finally felt like peace. The phone buzzed again in my coat pocket. I didn't check. Just kept walking. That chapter was over. What would you have done in my place? Would you have answered the calls or walked away like I did? I want to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're into true stories about family, betrayal, and quiet revenge, hit subscribe and tap the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.